That's the issue I wanted to talk about. So let's circle back onto that and see if we can prove that one way or another, okay? And we'll also look at the retriever and some other things. Unfortunately, I only have historical data from about a year ago. So we're going to start, we're only going to be able to look at that, but I think we can still get quite a bit of good information out of that. So first of all, I want to start with the retriever. The retriever is the ship that is now being paid for by real life money. And the expectation, what I've heard over and over again, is that this is unfair to the people who make retrievers, because it will suppress the value of the price. And even in his video, he refers to it as going down from 40 to 30. But the problem is that that's not actually correct. For one day, the buy orders, sorry, the low went down, right? So the day that the pack came out, what? Where'd it go? That's sus. Maybe? I think? Weird. I thought there was a day with a low of 30. Either way, when it first came out, the price went down. And that makes sense. Like the buy order. Yeah, the buy order price went down. And that makes sense because the people who are buying the retrievers are likely not, as I said yesterday, they're not going to go buy a retriever and then go, oh, I don't need to buy a retriever from the market. I can buy a retriever from CCP. It's simply that this is the opportunity to do so, and so they are going for it. So the people who buy a retriever to have a retriever, the opportunity cost to the market is going to be much more subtle and less impactful, right? Because it's going to be that person doesn't buy their next retriever, which is a lot more difficult to suss out. However, the buy order dips down because there are some people who buy the retriever and immediately flip it and sell it. And those people will be selling it to buy orders, which are going to drive those prices down. Those people that want that immediate gratification aren't necessarily going to sell it for sell orders. But what we actually see, and I find this fascinating, is that rather than the price going down, we see the price going up. So this is the mining changes here, and the retriever, as with all the other mining barges, have now become far more valuable. So you see this bump, and it keeps going up. And I'll tell you this right now. It's we can look up the other ones, but here, actually, let me do this. Why can't I thought there's a little button that says show market group? No? Yes? Fine. Coveter. Add to market quick bar and proc. Add to market quick bar. Okay. So once again, here's the retrievers track, and you can see this is the mining changes right here. And so this increase is the increase in the use of retrievers after the mining changes. Okay. The procurer, however, in the same time period, while it does have a bit of an uptick, does not actually increase much. Why? Because technically speaking, the procurer in a lot of ways did get nerfed. Interestingly enough, you see this big spike at the very end, just like you kind of do with the retrievers. And that corresponds with the 12th. So around the time of this sale, you see a jump in both retriever prices and even the coveter prices. But the retriever prices spike is bigger. Well, is this because of the sale? Probably not. This it's not because of the event either, because the event doesn't really use mining barges much. This is because of the compression changes, right? The compression changes came at the same time. That restarts a lot of people's operations, or it gets other people's operations to expand. They've been waiting on this for quite some time. So you see an increase in activity after the compression changes. I think that's pretty simple and uncontroversial to say. You see the same thing on the proc level and on the coveter level. The proc, you see the least amount of bump on because they were, I guess, the loser out of the rebalance. Okay? So, I actually heard a really, really interesting theory as to why you see this giant spike that's happening now that the sale. Because again, on paper, the prediction would be that the selling of the Retriever pack would cause the price to go down. That isn't what's happening. So what is happening? My guess was that this was functioning as an advertisement. So many people were talking about Retrievers that it caused people to want to buy them. And so they did. But here's the problem with that theory. The volume hasn't increased, right? Like I mean, you could argue that it might have decreased, but I mean, it's still about the same average. It just doesn't have the same spike. So no increase in volume, but an increase in price. I heard a very interesting theory about this, and I wish I should pull it up on Twitter, who it was that said it. But what I now believe is happening is that the people who build and supply Retrievers saw this change and assumed that that made now a bad time to sell Retrievers. Therefore, they don't put it on the market, assuming that the market will be flooded by people buying Retrievers. However, people buying the Retrievers are not selling those Retrievers at the same rate as the people who were building them were. And therefore, the same volume changes with a reduced supply, because the normal manufacturers of Retrievers are no longer supplying the market, causes the price to go up. That's economics. Pretty fun, huh? We're all learning lessons here. So let's look at this further. Okay, I want to talk about this because I hear this argument all the freaking time, and I hear it on both sides, and it frustrates the fuck out of me. Okay, all of these pearl clutchers that are complaining about these changes, the industry changes, the mining changes, etc. 07, you know my name. 5, thank you for that Prime sub. 07's to you. You get all those emotes. 07's in chat. Thank you. All right. On every side of this argument, I've been hearing the same thing. And I've been hearing this since the industry changes. The industry changes have made things more expensive for new bros. It is a long and semi-proud tradition of EVE Online for experienced players to use newbie players as an excuse for their argument, right? Pearl clutching. Think of the new bros, right? You always hear this. The most flagrant example of this was waste mechanics. When people were complaining about new bros getting, waste or whatever, when really what they were complaining about is that their roll quals are getting waste. That's why when the new bros had their waste taken away, that didn't fix the problem for them. It just got rid of their excuse. It got rid of their argument. It got rid of their defense. Really what it was about it was about the roll quals, which has nothing to do with new bros. Okay? So that's a precedent. There are different priorities. Not a precedent, but that's a point. There are different priorities for a new bro versus an experienced player. So let's pay very close attention to what experienced players say about what new bros experience. Okay? Here's the problem. The industry changes did not increase prices of ships for new bros. It decreased the price of ships for new bros. It increased the price for more experienced pilots. Your faction battleship don't fucking count. That's not a new bro ship. That capital don't count. That's not a new bro ship. Your faction ships, those don't count. Not a new bro ship. Let's look at new bro ships. Frigates. Tristan. All right, first of all, before we actually do this, let's look at this. Battleships are not a new bro ship to build, by the way. I've been doing industry for a couple of years now. I'm pretty deep into it. And I don't even have, I don't think I have any, I might have one research BPO for battleships. Battleship BPOs are such a larger, like such a scale above even battle cruisers. It's ridiculous. Even before, we're getting to the Rifter, even before the changes happened. Okay, so, by the way, so these patch notes, this is the patch notes for version 19.3. These are the patch notes that came out in April 27th of last year. And in this patch notes, it says that... Or rather, yeah, 413. The industry update was at least the first half of it was implemented, which means the second half of it was implemented by the end of April, right? So we're going to look at the end of April, beginning of March as being like the turning point for things. And we're going to look at that as a moment to change things. And also same as December. So March is industry changes. December is mining changes. With that in mind, let's look. Asteros, Asteros are I would say that Asteros got caught up in the mix, and it's unfortunate, and probably something should be done about it. But at the same time, Asteros, like a lot of other faction ships, do have an alternative method of acquisition. So if a new bro wants an Astero, go do exploration in rogue drone sites and get your own chip. All right. So, with that in mind, we can see January, February, March, April. Not March, May. May comes after April. You heard it here first. Just trying to clear up all of them false assumptions. Like the fact that March comes after April. Wait, April, May. Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Dyslexia. I don't know, whatever. All right. But my point is that this point right here, the beginning of this downturn, is the industry changes. So the Tristan went from 0.75 to it went down below and then it came back up a little bit, but it's now at 0.5. So it is now 2/3. Yeah, 2/3 the price of what it was prior to the industry changes. And remember, this is also like, oh, scarcity, you know, the value of minerals and all that sort of stuff. We were keeping the value of minerals low by mining so much. That's the funny thing about the argument that he makes in the video, is that he argues that the player base was artificially increasing the value of things, when in actuality, what really happened was player activity was artificially suppressing the value of things, namely minerals. So, but the Tristan goes down. Let's look at more. Tormentor. Much more over, back and forth, but still, you see it, the same sort of pattern. Slasher. Same sort of pattern. Rifter. Same sort of pattern. Now, granted, so again, but also these frigates are really, really cheap. So we're also going to see these patterns as we go up. One of the ones I'm interested in is the Logi frigates, because they actually still contain rare stuff. But look. Still a dramatic difference from a high of 0.5 to a current of 0.2. That's a lot. I understand Firestorm, but like, I'm just trying to avoid the controversy, I guess, at the moment. Merlin. I think it's safe to say that we can see a pattern of a drop in price. Now, there's been ups and downs since then, but a drop in price across the board in every single frigate since the industry changes. Condor actually has the least amount. That actually might be worth looking into just to see whether or not it's because they get used more or whatever. Yeah, you're seeing more of the same pattern. So let's go up one step. Let's look at destroyers. Oh, look. The same pattern exists. Even if you don't count this spike, it starts at 1.5 and now it's at 1.3. Corax. I wonder if this spike is because of people anticipating the changes, not understanding it. Because like I said, the mineral cost of all of the different ships at this tier went down. Everything smaller than a battle cruiser went down in price. We're just looking at that. Yeah, we're working our way up to cruisers. Coercer. Same thing. Algos. Same thing. You know what these spikes are, by the way? Very likely. The ones with the most dramatic spikes. These are probably like PvP events, like proving conduits or whatever. Sometimes those can create massive spikes or changes. All right, let's look at cruisers. Cruisers, because this is like the thing that players get into, right? Like, a fit cruiser is 30 million ISK. Well, the hull for a Vexor went from 17.5 to 11. Yeah, 11 million. You couldn't get one for less than 15 before, but now you can get them for 11. I don't know if you guys know this, but that's it going down. Yeah, this peak is speculation, I agree. Thorax. Same. Stabber. Same. Scythe. Less, but same. Rupture. There you go. Osprey. See what I'm saying? This is why, like, with all the arguments, blackout aside, selling ships aside, whatever, since the industry change, I have seen this argument come up over and over and over again, and people keep saying it like it's true, and nobody checks. Ships that new bros use are cheaper now. We'll look into why in a second. MOA. We're getting there. Maybe. Mauler. Likewise. See? Look, even then, from here to down there, that's down. That's what down looks like, guys. Executor. Celestis, which was asked earlier. Look at that. Holy shit, it went from 13 to 9. That's a big difference, guys. Percentage-wise, that's a big difference. 17 to 11 for a Caracal. Blackbirds, 13.7 to 8.7. What? We're looking at the wrong stats. We should be looking at the sold prices. What are you talking about? That's what this is what they've been selling for. If it isn't sold, it doesn't show up on this graph. This is the high and low of what it's actually sold for. Sorry, but T1 cruisers were less than 10 million before scarcity? Right. I'll deal with that in a second. My point is that the industry change, while it famously made battleships and above more expensive, people keep claiming that the industry change made smaller ships more expensive too, made all ships more expensive. But that is demonstrably not true. Scarcity may have driven up the prices of things, but my point was is that the industry changes themselves actually reduced how much it costs to build ships below battle cruiser tier. I know. I wish I had stats that went back further than this. I wish I had pre-scarcity stats. But we'll talk again. We'll talk about what's going on there. Augurer and Arbitrator. I think that's like all of the major cruisers. I made sure to grab them all. Battle cruisers, small smattering, so that way we don't like drive home the issue. Now, I actually wouldn't have expected to see as much of a change here, but you still see like from 70 million to 54 million. I guess some people like to argue points even though that they're wrong, kind of a waste of energy. Yeah, but a lot of people get a lot of weight out of making this argument. I've heard this be brought up time and time and time and time and time and time again this last year, and no one is pushing back against it. People just say definitively that, like, oh, everything's more expensive. The new bros now need to do more to get their to get their first ship or whatever. And they blame the industry changes. Again, scarcity is a different issue. We'll talk about this separately. But as far as the industry changes go, the actual honest to God truth is most people didn't pay attention to the fact that the mineral requirements for everything battle cruisers and below got cheaper. Cheaper, not more expensive. Harbinger. Same. Drake. Same. Brutix. Same. Man, do these people who speculated feel bad right now? So now, battleships. Battleships are what really got hit a lot by this. So let's look. Typhoon. You remember how everybody said that battleship prices are so high now that the industry changes happened? Well, I mean, you might be able to argue that this was the point that it was at, and then it went up to here, and then went back down. But it ain't nearly what everybody makes it out to be. These aren't explosively more expensive. Raven. This is even worse as far as like proving the narrative, right? Like, this is the pre-industry changes announcement. This is now. Not that big of a difference, guys. We are looking at, so this is a tracking of the orange line is the median day price, i.e. the average price that it sold at for the day. The blue line is the average moving average over 5 days. Sorry, the orange dot is the median day price. The gray line is the min and max of each day. The blue line is the 5-day moving average, and the orange line is the 20-day moving average. The Doshian channel is gray. Don't ask me what that means. Somebody else can tell you. And these bars at the bottom represent volume of actual sold. Typhoon? I don't have Tempest, but we can get it in a second. Megathron. I think I've made my point, right? Like, the battleships aren't nearly as big of a difference as everybody makes it out to be. And what is Signal trying to get my attention about? He just posted Ashtarothi, that's it. Again, I'm looking in isolation at the industry changes. It's everything below battleships, not them included. Right. Have I ever built battleships after the industry patch? You know that we produce capital core temperature regulators and core temperature regulators, right? Like, yes. Yes, I have. Right, Fire. And okay, I'm gonna drill in on exactly what you said then, and speak to it directly, because the point is that your overall point wasn't necessarily bad, but one of the facts that you said showed to me that you weren't taking into account some of the information. What you mentioned was how cheap battleships were. You said you mentioned how cheap Dominixes were back in like 2006 compared to now, as a way of suggesting inflation. The issue is that across the board, if you look at the numbers, there isn't any actual real inflation in the economy of EVE Online. That the inflation basically exclusively occurs on the Plex side of things. That the prices of things haven't necessarily changed. Like, battleships, or, things are mostly more or less about the same price as they were before, compared to the amount of inflation that has happened to Plex. What's up, Galaxier? Now, why did the Dominix change that much? Well, if you're comparing to prior to 2010, which I believe you were, you actually run into a different problem, which is back to Noisy Gamer. In 2012, they performed Tiericide. Oh, Scotty Dog nailed it! Prior to Tiericide, there were tier 1 battleships, tier 2 battleships, and tier 3 battleships, right? So the Abaddon, for example, was the highest tier Amar ship. So the Abaddon was just better than the Armageddon and the other one, Apocalypse. It had more stats allocated to it. It had more power allocated to it. And it cost more to build. That's important. So when they Tiericited it, what they did was, rather than try to bring everything down, what they did was they used the tier 3 battleships as the new normal and brought up the tier 1 and tier 2 battleships to this level of tier 3, both by buffing their capabilities and the cost to build them. So specifically, when you mention the price change in the Dominix specifically, that is because the Dominix literally doubled in price overnight because of a change in the mineral composition of the Dominix. I know this because that is the very first time that I made a stupid amount of money because of market change. Because I was watching the stream while I was at work, and I was working at a job that allowed me to log in. So I was one of those assholes that logged in to Jita the second that announcement was made at like FanFest or whatever, and bought as many Dominixes as I could afford. Exactly. Yeah, I bought a boatload of Domis too. They were guaranteed to double in price. They literally were going to be worth more after the patch. So I'm not saying that there aren't inflation or deflation. I mean, there is minimal if you actually look at it. We can look at the consumer price index and stuff like that in the MERs in order to look at that as like a real scale. But specifically, since you brought up that ship specifically, I wanted to point out that that change in price wasn't something magically done by players to manipulate the market. It was actually done by CCP when they changed the mineral composition of battleships in 2012. Remember the changes to mining foreman mine link? I actually don't remember that. I mean, I do remember the change, but I don't remember it crashing the price. A lot of things crashed. A lot of changes crashed the price. That's true. So that's a point that I wanted to make about the battleship thing. So let's go into the issue of, well, let's look into why some of this might be. Now, the industry changes was a bit confusing because they didn't really show it to us in a macro level. We didn't see a grand scale of things. There was no like high level understanding of the changes. There's just raw numbers. And so people took those raw numbers and they just kind of like ran with it with whatever they noticed out of it. So in a lot of cases, like the higher end stuff had their low end minerals, especially titanium, carved out of them and replaced by the special doodads, right? The core temperature regulators, the life support system backup units, et cetera, right? Like what they did was they took away a chunk of the titanium and stuff that's necessary, and they added this new stuff, which not only increases the price of those things that require those doodads because those doodads are not properly supplied onto the market yet, but it actually decreases the value of titanium because now, you know, a single Titan uses hundreds, if not thousands, of frigates or cruisers worth of titanium. And therefore, having a Titan have its titanium cut is a major change in how much titanium is consumed. So the biggest consumers are no longer consuming as much, right? I understand that the doodads are their own criticism and all that stuff. I'm talking about specifically these ships, these sub-capital below battleship fits, and why it's counterintuitive that their price actually went down. Meanwhile, on the lower bound stuff, they lost a lot of the higher end materials and moved it to the cheaper end materials, which are now even cheaper, relatively speaking, because of the overall lower demand on them, right? So now frigates, destroyers, and cruisers take more titanium, but the universe as a whole consumes less titanium, which means lower supply, lower price. Okay? So let's look at what this is. Titanium. There you go. It's kind of interesting and probably not a coincidence that this graph more or less directly maps against all of those ships that we just looked at below Battleship, right? Because here you can see the fact that the value of titanium went down at exactly the same time as those ships had more of their value shifted to titanium, which was cheaper. Okay? Pyrite's a gimme. Pyrite's slag. Pyrite comes out of moon mining. The more R4 moon mines there are in the world, the more people that are supplying those doodads for the battleships, you know what else they get? Shit tons of pyrite. Too much that they know what to do with. So yeah, pyrite not only is like, well, first of all, it kind of stable. It wasn't stable because there's too much. But like now that we have the mining changes and we have even more people moon mining, you see a further drop in pyrite. Mexilon. Same. The price of Mexilon went down. Zydrine. Price of Zydrine went down. Megasite. Oh. A break in the pattern. I wonder what that means. Let's keep looking. Isogen. Hey, wait a minute. This doesn't have the pattern either. I know. Class, those of you in the class who know the answer, shh. Noxium. This one's kind of wild, actually. All right. Yeah. So why is this happening? Well, it's really simple. What happened during the course of scarcity And as part of all of these changes, I don't remember if it was exactly at the same time, but it might have been, they shifted it. I think it was before. They shifted it so that certain minerals are only acquired in certain places. So in order to get isogen or noxium, or we're going to go with megasite, right? No? Yeah. Or megasite, you must mine in either, yeah, isogen used to be a waste slag, but now it's not. So it took some time for isogen. You see it takes some time for the isogen stockpiles to get cut through, but when they did, fun time was over and it goes up. And the mining changes does not affect that. In fact, if anything, the mining changes increases this problem because all of the other minerals gets mined a lot more, but the mining changes doesn't actually help anybody mine in low sec because throughput isn't the reason why people weren't mining in low sec. And therefore the low sec materials become even more of a choke point than they were before, as high sec and null sec minerals are able to be mined at an increased rate while low sec minerals aren't. Okay? So the more things take isogen, megasite, and noxium, the more chances that the price would have been affected up. Which, if you note, those are the minerals that got reduced in the ships that are cruiser and below. And anything that uses predominantly tritanium, pyrite, or mexilon, well, their prices went down just by the cost of minerals. Now, okay. Let's address that elephant in the room. I am simply talking about the industry changes, okay? People keep bringing up scarcity. Well, I don't have a graph that goes back to scarcity. If somebody has one for me, I would love to have it, to look at it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because we know what has caused that change, right? The issue was that Rookwalls were mining so much. In fact, you know what? There's even a graph for this. I'll show you it. Eve. We'll look at the MER. Feb. We already looked at it earlier, but now I feel it's become more relevant. So, a couple things to note. So this is the economic indices, okay? So if the proposition that things have inflated over time was true, then you would see an upward trend in the mineral price index or the primary producer price index, any of these price indexes. You would see a gradual trend upwards. But you don't. You see it goes up and down, but it's still in the same band. Like if you were to draw a line to map this graph to approximate it, it would be a more or less straight line across, right? So obviously you see this giant spike of the mineral price index when everything was like, when everybody's freaking out. But beyond that, we don't actually see a huge amount of inflation in the history of EVE Online, which tracks to what we see in like the markets and stuff like that. Now, is it not here? Hold up, there's graphs here that there's not there's graphs missing. That's why my episode was so short this week. Hold on.
Today's forecast. Pirate activity seems higher than usual. Please fly safe as
Dang
you
it.
reach the station.
Yeah, I noticed that just now. All right. Like, and this is post scarcity, right? Like, this is a lot of extra mining going on. This is the problem. This is why minerals were so cheap before, right? Was because waste is screwing up data. No, the waste is right down here. See, there's waste right down here. So the problem is that, man, there's a thing that was shown. Maybe I'll have to go find it. Hold on a second. They may have a link to the image that showed how much mining was being done by Rorquals prior to scarcity. Can somebody pull that up for me? Just raise your hand when you do, and I'll permit it to be linked. But what really was happening was the Rorquals were outstripping literally like all other mining in the game combined, which does make minerals cheaper, which does make ships cheaper, but value is relative, especially for a new bro. You know, a guy who is ratting and getting payouts from CCP, like, yeah, if the price of minerals go down, their buying power goes up. But here's the thing. The guy who is needing to buy that cruiser, like the newer bro couldn't mine before and have it be very valuable because their mining was basically stepped on by everybody else. So when it came to the acquisition of that same amount of ISK, to the generation of the resources, the accumulation of the same amount of value that it takes to buy that cruiser or to buy that other the destroyer or whatever, that I don't believe has gone up. Like the struggle has gone up. I think that in the same way that things that new bros buy has gone up after scarcity, for every amount that it's gone up after scarcity, especially with the industry changes compensating for it, the activities that new bros do have likewise been now given more value. And this is what pisses me off about this, because prior to this, everybody's like, oh, well, new bros need to be able to do something that's valuable and all that stuff. By taking those bigger pieces out of the equation, by making it so that Rorquals don't accidentally overflood the entire market with tritanium, it makes it so that when that new bro mines tritanium, it actually means something. Or at least means more. So I don't think it's as clear cut as it's harder to be a new bro now than it was before. I think that there are new and better ways of making ISK. The resource acquisition activities are now worth more to do. And the principal value of that more comes from experienced players, because they're the ones paying more. They're the ones paying for more for their ships. The faction ships, the battleships, the capitals. Like, the rich people and their increase in prices are subsidizing the cheaper stuff for new bros. So this is why, how do Rorquals mine Trit? Well, they don't now. Did they not try and mine it before too? I thought I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah, Moongu used to have all kinds of stuff in it. I mean, maybe I think I'm true. You had the Rorqual graph. Awesome. Hold on. Permit chubby. Go for it. There we go. Like, you want to know why mineral prices were cheap? Right there. Does that look like it's healthy? Hell no. I'm pretty sure Dunk would not be overly ecstatic that he's supporting my argument, but no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Spodmane and Arcanor had Trit. That's true. But you see what I'm saying, though? Like, the argument that things are more expensive now that scarcity is over is simply because players were not able to overwhelm the system and therefore devalue the effort of those new bros. Whereas the industry changes literally just made things cheaper for new bros. So at best, that argument deserves a little asterisk on the end of it and an explanation. And at worst, it is factually not true to suggest that new bros are being punished by these changes. If anything, and trust me, as a guy who's running a new bro organization, this has opened up a ton of new opportunities for new bros to take their advantages of having no skin in the game, having no commitment, having, being able to risk everything in order to do whatever, in order to, bootstrap. I think that there's more capabilities for new bros to bootstrap themselves into the game now than there ever was pre-scarcity. Can you even compare it when no one's building caps? I mean, some people are building caps, but yes, I understand that there is a significant decrease in the number of caps being built. But you would expect that if that was such a big deal, then it would keep the prices low because less minerals are being used. But the thing is that a lot of the minerals that this is involved with have just been like more or less cut out of the cap. Well, yeah, more or less cut out of the capital thing because so much of the capital's value is being moved to R4 Moongu. So capitals are being built less, but they also are using less minerals each. So it's hard to figure out what the exact nature of that is. Again, I'm not trying to say it's this much over or this much under. I'm just looking at the trend. We saw all of the different ships. We saw the amount of ore that's being mined, and what we see is that the argument that new bros have a harder time getting to their ships is not true. I remember Ravens costing 230 million before the battleship changes and spiked up to 500 million. Now they've gone to 300 million. Yep. That's what we saw. And also, I think that, so another thing is that this price will continue to correct itself. Now that Moongu can be compressed, that's going to make it so that people can refine their Moongu for more efficiently. That means that we're going to be able to get more reactions done. That means more capital core temperature regulators. That means more RCF. That means more life support backup units. That means that this bottleneck gets reduced. And so these prices may actually get further corrected. But my point is that this isn't some huge freaking change in battleship prices. You get what I'm saying? But all that said, let's look at the truth of the matter. There you go. This is what you would expect. This, not that. This is what you would expect. This is what you would expect if it was in fact true that the industry changes made things more expensive. This is the industry changes making things more expensive. This is what it looks like when the industry changes make things more expensive. Do you see how different this graph is? Like we can argue the merits on whether or not it's like, oh, well, it's about the same. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit less, whatever. This is what it's compared against. Okay? This is what happens when the industry changes add a bottleneck that the market can't compensate for. Best market prices on the weekend or during the week? That's a question for Oz. I'd say that volume is definitely more moved during the weekend. I just don't know which one that would mean. The cliff at the end is an accident? Yeah, I imagine that's just that's somebody... Yeah, that's fine. Details like that. I mean, there's like a fall off here too. Thursday's the best market day. There you go. So this is my point, right? Like faction ships, yes. Faction ships absolutely got kicked in the nuts. But frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battle cruisers, none of them did. Battleships are are back to about normal, right? Like the thing is that, okay, this goes back to my giving good feedback story, right? The reason why I'm picking at this so much is, thank you, Funsui. The reason why I'm picking at this so much is because I believe that you can have a good position, but undermine it with bad arguments, right? You could the argument that the economy is destabilized, or that something's wrong, or whatever, that it's a pain, there's pain points for you, the fact that dreads are hard to build right now, whatever, like these are valid complaints and there are good arguments to back them up. But saying something that's demonstrably not true every single time a player brings up the fact that new bros have to spend more for their ships than before as a principal argument is a person whose position is falling on deaf ears to CCP. Because CCP knows the truth. They can look at the numbers and say, well, these people are just wrong in their assessment of the situation. They didn't even look. Most T2 stuff was unaffected by price. The only reason why Tech 2 would have been affected by price is if the base ship that's required to build it was affected by price. Well, yeah, like CCP just won't stop buffing Marauders. Not that I complain. Yeah, the jump drive changes are the jump harmonics changes. Fonsui. We'll talk about that if we can, if we have time, if we get to it today. But do you guys see my point? Like, again, I'm not saying that they should be selling retrievers. I'm not saying that things are fine. I'm not saying that the economy is good, actually. What I'm saying is some of these arguments, in particular, the Think of the New Bros versions of these arguments, are counterproductive to the points that these people are trying to make. Yes. You know who can be pissed off? Combat explorers. Everyone who made their living on jackpots via BPCs for pirate ships, you deserve to be mad. You deserve to be angry. You got screwed. No, hey, when it comes to that, I'm right upset. I'm upset right alongside of you. Trust me. I mean, I got a Bargus BPC like literally like 2 weeks before the changes were announced. All of the indie players aren't angry, they just quit. I mean, you say that, but like, hold on. All of the industry players have quit. For that to be true, we would expect the red line to be going down right now. If all of the industry players quit, so there is no more industry, the red line would be trending down right now. It did take a hit with the industry changes. Some recovery, more down. It's going back up. So if you want to say that this is when they all quit, maybe. I'd agree with that. I would say that, okay, so here's the thing. And this is true in general. So 40% of your corporation quit. Very, very possibly true. But let me explain this a different way. A few like during blackout and all that kind of stuff, like nullsec people were saying that like they were going to quit the game, that everybody's like nullsec is just going to give up or whatever, right? Well, let's say magically like a gigantic percentage of the nullsec people just quit the game, right? What that does is it leaves a vacuum of space to be taken. There are tons of people in this game that would love to own a nullsec system, but can't or don't because other groups already have those nullsec systems. In the same way, for every industrialist that quits, this is why those like industrial strikes or whatever that gets said on this forum sometimes never work, because one person's cause is another person's opportunity. If you quit you're doing industry stuff because you're mad, then I can now do your job and make your money for you instead, because you're not doing it anymore. You see what I'm saying? There are plenty of empty nullsec systems to be taken. I mean, yes, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day. I would argue that like a lot of people don't take it because of the threat of those bigger blocks coming in and taking it out. But you get my point, right? For every vacuum made in the game by people quote unquote quitting it is an opportunity for others to fill that vacuum. They quit the game, not just indie. I understand. Yeah, they did. And there is a certain amount of turnover that CCP is doing right now, where people who see things from the older philosophy, in particularly the prosperity day, or that the glut days, the people that joined, especially that joined or at least bought in from 2015 to 2019, like they have a skewed view of what is right and wrong in Eve. So yeah, they're going to get mad and they might quit. But you know what? A person who is in the game and demanding and being loud and and trying to force the game to be something else than what it is, assuming that they're not right, big assumption, then they're not a valuable part of the community, right? There's a fair chunk of this. Like, here's a good, let's say the Retriever, it turns out that CCP selling the Abyss. When the Abyss came out, people got really mad because it was instance PvE. Some people are still mad. People may have quit out of that, right? But the people who quit are the people that feel that instanced PvE are not right for the game. And the people who replace them are people who accept that instanced PvE is part of the game. Therefore, they leave and other people come in and fill their gap, right? EVE Online has a huge churn. We talk about player base being old, but like the average player is less than 6 months old, right? We have a huge churn. So when it comes to things like the Doctor Who event or the industry changes or the mining changes, there seems to be a certain feeling that it's like, if this is the thing that gets you to quit the game, then maybe we don't want you. And I'm not saying that, but that's just the general impression that I've gotten, right? That for years we followed player wisdom about a lot of things. Summer Rage happened, CCP ate crow. For a long time, CCP was like, we proved to CCP that we know better. And so we have this long series of time in which the player base was more or less catered to. And then now we see the problems of that as well. And so part of that is the fact that we now need to do the right thing in spite of the player base as well. And in 2019, CCP made a significant change to the way that they evaluate the game, including the introduction into way more metrics that determine like what people are actually doing. And so they discovered the truth behind some of the things that we just take for granted as true. For example, the very extent of the damage that that war decks were doing to the game. EVE Offline, sure. But I need to go to the bathroom. So there's Blackout. Ooh, yeah, that's bad. So it was stable, but then starting around March, it ticked back down. That's unfortunate. We will consider what that means when I get back.